Talent doesn't go missing. It gets buried under pressure, fear, and silence. If you've ever seen a spark in your child dim or felt the weight of not knowing how to help, you're in the right place. Hey, my name is Coach Enoch, and I like to begin with a simple truth. If you're here watching this, it's because you see something in your child. You see a spark. Maybe you catch it in the backyard when they're messing around with the ball and just pulling off tricks. Maybe you see it in practice when the pressure is off, flashes of real talent, real potential. But you also see the gap. You see the frustration when they get in the car after a match. You know that look in their eyes during that silent car ride home. You see them dominate a game 1 week and completely disappear the next. As a parent, the inconsistency is incredibly hard to watch. You want to help. You want to say the right thing, but the usual advice just isn't working. You tell them to work harder. They are working hard. Effort isn't the issue. You tell them, be more aggressive. They try, but it feels forced and unnatural. You tell them, just have fun. But they can't have fun because they're anxious and worried about making mistakes. Most coaches focus on the feet, fix your touch, pass the ball quicker, run faster. But today, I'm telling you that the problem isn't in their feet. The ceiling that your child keeps hitting, that invisible ceiling that caps their performance, isn't a technical ceiling at all. It's an identity ceiling. It's in their mind, in their self-belief, in how they see themselves under pressure. So for the next few minutes, we are not going to talk about drills. We are not going to talk about fitness or fancy footwork. We are going to talk about the inner game, the human behind the athlete. Because once you understand how the inner game works, a lot of those mysteries about your child's ups and downs start to make perfect sense. You'll stop wondering, why are they so inconsistent? And you'll start knowing exactly how to help them unlock the player they are meant to be. Let me give you an analogy to explain why talented players get stuck. This is something every parent and coach needs to understand. Imagine your child is a high-performing computer. Their body is their speed, their strength, their technical skills. That's the hardware. Their mind, their belief system, focus, confidence, that's the software. Most of us spend thousands of dollars and thousands of hours upgrading the hardware. We invest in private trainers, elite camps, new boosts, specialized speech training. We keep adding RAM, installing a faster processor, basically building a supercomputer out of their physical abilities. But what runs the computer? The software. That is, the software is outdated or buggy, the computer will crash at the worst time. It will lag, freeze, or throw error messages when you try to run a heavy program, like a championship final, a showcase trial, even just a high-pressure league game. That is exactly what's happening to players every weekend. Their hardware is elite, but their software is outdated. They're running on mental programs that haven't been updated to handle the stress and the challenge they're facing. If your child's mind is still running Windows 95 while their body is trying to perform like the latest supercomputer, something is going to break under pressure. Think about it. All the technical training in the world can't help if deep down a little voice in your child's head is whispering, don't mess up, I am not good enough, I can't handle this. That's the computer virus in the software. We haven't taught our kids the internal tools that create consistency, how to regulate their own heart rate when the game gets intense, how to talk to themselves after a mistake instead of beating themselves up, how to separate what I did in a game from who I am as a person. If the internal system is shaky, the external performance will collapse under that pressure. It doesn't matter how perfect their footwork is if their brain is constantly screaming, don't mess up, don't mess up. So my message is, don't just upgrade the hardware, upgrade the software. That's what we're here to do today. Take a deep look into the software running in your child's game and how we can update it for success. Now, you might be wondering, why is Coach Enoch the one talking about this? What does he know about my child's struggles? Well, let me share a bit about my story, because I was exactly the kind of player that we are talking about. Now, if you look on paper, my career with the clubs like Luton Town, Bristol City, Leeds United, and earning a couple of international cups with Nigeria, you might think, well, Enoch must be one of the lucky ones, a natural talent who had it easy. The reality is quite the opposite. I was not an academy prodigy. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't groomed from success from a very early age. In fact, I didn't sign a professional contract until I was 21. I was never even at a pro academy at any age. Elite players either made it or given up their dream by the time they're 21. I actually went to university and got a degree before turning pro. And that's almost unheard of at top level at that time in England. And let me tell you, because I had a degree, because I was a bit different, I was often misunderstood. There were people who literally, coaches who literally told me, you don't have the passion for this. You could work in a bank with your qualifications. Like, can you imagine? Now, here I was, completely in love with the game, willing to sacrifice and dissacrifice everything for it. And some coaches looked at me and saw a guy with a backup plan, a guy whose heart might not be fully in it. They couldn't have been more wrong, but that was their perception. I was also an unusual case because my physique and my personality. I'm 6'5", big physical presence. And on top of that, I'm articulate and well-spoken. That combination was not what some old school coaches expected. To them, I looked like a stereotypical target man, lump the ball up front, get onto his head it. So that's the only role that some coaches wanted me to play. They put me in a box. They saw my size, but overlooked my overall ability and skill. They heard me speak and question my toughness. I had coaches who essentially said, "You're too educated. You're not that typical hungry street kid. So I don't know if you really have that dog in you to fight for this." And I was told no again and again. Like, can you imagine how that felt? I was working as hard as anyone. I knew I had more to my game than just being a battering ran up front. And I kept getting overlooked and underestimated. I sat on benches. I got cut from squads. I had moments where I thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I should just go and get a 9 to 5. There were moments sitting in locker rooms after a game where I barely played thinking, like, why am I doing this? Like, no one believes in me. My confidence was in pieces. Every no from a coach, every comment about me not fitting the mold, it all piled up in my subconscious. And I started to believe that I didn't belong. So when I talk about this inner game stuff, it's not some theory I read in a book. It's my life. I lived it. My talent wasn't the issue. My identity was. I was carrying all this weight, all these doubts and labels. I was the player they're trying to survive instead of the player who believes they belong at that top level. The turning point for me was when I realized I had to change my story. I remember a specific night after getting subbed off and driving home alone. I was angry, I was hurt, and honestly, I was tired of feeling like an imposter, tired of second guessing myself. That night, I made a decision. If I was going to really make it, I had to build my confidence from the inside. I had to stop waiting for a coach or anyone else to validate me. I needed to become my own biggest supporter. I started devouring every resource I could find on sports psychology, mindset, confidence. I experimented with routines, visualization, positive self-talk, breathing techniques, anything to get my head in a better place. In essence, I had to build my engine while I was already driving a car in the professional game. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight, but piece by piece, I constructed a mental framework that allowed me to finally play to my potential. And when I finally understood how my mind, emotions, and identity worked, my career took off. I went from fringe player to starter. I went from bench to scoring goals. I even got those international caps for Nigeria at that time, something I always dreamed of but almost gave up on. Not because suddenly I got faster or stronger, but because my mind was no longer sabotaging. I was free to play without the baggage. I built this system, what I'm sharing with you today, because I don't want your child to have struggles for years guessing at what might be wrong. I don't want them losing their joy of the game because of confidence issues that are absolutely fixable. I spent 5 or 6 years of my career wrestling with self-doubt, and I could have solved it in a few months if I had the right guidance. I've essentially written the manual I wish I had back then, and I'm here right now to give that manual to you. So let's dive into it. This feedback loop you can see on the screen, I call it the superstar loop. It's the core of everything we do. It's the map of human performance, and it shows how the internal game and the external game feed into each other continuously. It's a loop because what happens inside the player creates what we see on the outside, and then the outside results feed right back into the inside in a continuous cycle. So let's break it down into 2 parts, and you'll see how it all fits together. This is the left side of the loop. What's happening inside the player's mind and body before anything visible happens on the field. Super stands for subconscious, understanding, perception, emotions, and resonance. These are 5 elements that drive everything that comes after. The S, subconscious, that's the basement of the mind where all the deep identity beliefs live. Did your time get embarrassed of the mistake? Every time a coach yelled at them, every time they felt small or doubted, it got stored here in the subconscious. It's like the hard drive that records all the experiences, especially the emotional ones. When a player freezes up or seems to choke in a game, they're not choosing to freeze. The subconscious is pulling the emergency brake. Why? Because it remembers a past trauma or a fear Like, last time I tried this, I messed up and it hurt, so maybe not do it again. You cannot consistently outperform your subconscious identity. If deep down a player's self-image says, I'm the player who falters on big moments, they will fulfill that identity like a script. Part of our job is to help them rewrite that script in the subconscious. The you, understanding. This is the meaning the player gives to events. Think of it as the story they tell themselves about what's happening. For example, imagine your child gets subbed out of a game early. How do they interpret that? One player might think, coach is saving me for later. He trusts me and wants me fresh. That's a positive meaning. Another equally talented player might think, coach hates me. I'm playing awful. I'm probably going to get cut. That's a negative meaning. Same event, two totally different understandings. And those interpretations will lead to two very different emotional states. We have to teach players to control the narrative in their own head, to choose an understanding that empowers them rather than crushes them. It literally teaches them to be better storytellers about their own game. P, perception. Perception is the lens a player sees the game through. When a player is confident, they perceive the field differently. They see gaps in the defense. They see opportunities to exploit. When a player is terrified or full of doubt, they perceive nothing but threats. Every opponent looks bigger and faster. Every situation seems like a trap where they might make a mistake. It's like wearing tinted glasses. Confidence tints everything in a positive shade. Fear tints everything dark. We have to help our players clean their glasses so they can see reality, not fears. The clear perception means a player can play what's actually in front of them instead of playing against the ghost of their own doubts. The E, emotions. Emotions are simple energy emotion. Almost every young player out there is a victim of their emotions, meaning if they play and feel nervous, they play nervous. If they feel angry, they play reckless. They let emotions drive the bus. But here's what elite players learn. You can transform your emotions. Did you know that feeling nervous and feeling excited are almost identically the same? Heart pounding, butterflies in the stomach, adrenaline, the same psychological state, just with the same label. I'm nervous, this is bad. The process, I'm pumped up, let's go. Same feelings, different frame. We teach players very concrete tools to regulate and redirect emotions. Something as simple as a deep breath or a quick body reset can change a player's state in seconds. For example, if you see a child clenching their fist or holding their breath, when the pressure's on, they're feeding the nervous interpretation. We train them instead to take a slow breath, drop their shoulders, maybe bounce on their toes. Physical cues to tell the body, I'm okay, I'm excited, I'm loose. But when they master this, they can step onto the field feeling nerves turn into excitement rather than dread. The R, resonance. Resonance is what is ultimately aimed for the eternal game. This is where everything clicks and flows. It's where the player's thoughts, emotions, and body are all in harmony, producing that flow state athletes talk about. You've seen this in your child at least once. Those games were moments where they're just on. They're not overthinking. They're playing freely and confidently. They might describe it later as, I don't know, everything just felt right today. That's resonance. In that state, the game actually feels easy to them. They're having fun. They're creative. They bounce back from mistakes instantly. Our goal is to teach them how to get into that state on purpose and repeat it, rather than it being a rare, happy accident. Resonance is like a muscle and we can build it with practice. So that's the internal half of the equation. Now, as that internal state shifts, it naturally starts producing physical and visible effects on the outside. That brings us to the external game, STAR. The right side of the feedback loop is what we actually see on the field. The body language, the decisions, the plays, all the external stuff. STAR stands for state, thoughts, actions, and results. These are the tangible, observable parts of performance, but remember, they are driven by what's happening internally. And let's break this down. State. State is the physical and physiological condition of the athlete in the moment. It's their body language, their posture, their level of tension or relaxation. I can often tell within the first 10 seconds of kickoff how a player is going to perform just by looking at their state, especially their shoulders, their eyes, their movements. Are their shoulders high and tense or low and relaxed? Are they breathing or holding their breath? Where are their eyes, up and scanning or down and avoiding? If their body's in a fearful state, tight, stiff, closed off, a touch on the ball will be heavy and hesitant. If the body's in a confident state, tall, posture, loose, energized, the touch will be smooth and assured. Takeaway for parents: encourage your child to check their body state before the whistle. Something as simply as rolling their shoulders back, lifting their chin and taking a deep breath can physically signal to their brain, I'm ready, instead of I'm scared. The body and mind are two-way street. Fix one and you influence the other. Thoughts. Thoughts are the running mental dialogue in a player's mind during the game, and those thoughts directly flow from their state. If their body is tense and in fight or flight mode, the thoughts will typically be fear-based. Don't mess up. I hope I don't lose the ball. Coach will yank me out if I screw up. Those kinds of thoughts act like internal commands. They actually direct the players' next actions, usually toward exactly what they don't want. On the other hand, if the body state is confident and engaged, thoughts would be very different. I'm in this. I want the ball. I see the opening. Let's go for it. One of the simplest yet most powerful things we teach players is thought replacement. For instance, we train them to replace "don't mess up" with "next action." Why? If they dwell on a mistake they just made, their head is stuck in the past and in negativity. Next action becomes the mantra to snap them back to the present and onto the next solution, the next play, the next opportunity. Over time, they learn to catch negative thoughts and swiftly pivot them into something productive. This mental habit alone can be game-changing. The A is actions. Actions are what players actually do on the field. The passes, the shots, the tackles, the runs. This is where most parents, coaches, and players put all their focus. Why didn't you shoot? You should have passed, tackle harder, press faster. But actions are the end of the chain. They are the result of everything happening above. State thoughts, which are driven by the internal factors we already covered. If a player's actions are consistently timid or rash or sloppy, just trying to coach the action, actually be more aggressive or be more careful on ball without addressing the thought state looped behind it, is treating the symptom, not the cause. When the internal pieces align, the actions often fix themselves. Still, we do work on this level too, of course. We give players scenarios to practice better decisions and reinforce the right instincts, but the key is we address the chain leading to those actions, not just shout about the action itself. R is the results. Results are the outcomes of the actions. Goals scored, games won, mistakes made, matches lost, accolades earned or not. It's the final piece of the loop, the thing everyone ultimately cares about. Now here's the crucial part. Results feed back into the internal game. This is the feedback loop aspect of the superstar model. After the game, your child's mind will take those results, good or bad, and feed them back into their subconscious. That's the S at the beginning of the cycle. This is where things often go wrong. For many players, a bad result, a loss, a personal mistake, like missing a penalty, immediately becomes a story in their subconscious. We lost because of me. I always mess up in big moments. I'm not good enough. The negative interpretation of the result then lives inside them and starts to cycle over again, dragging down their confidence next time. Conversely, a good result can boost their identity. I knew I could do it. I belong at this level. But even positive results can be short-lived if the player doesn't consciously reinforce that confidence internally. So one of the most important things we teach is how to process results in a healthy way. Results are data. They are information, not a definition of the person. Win or lose, the key question is, what do we do with this information? If your child misses a decisive penalty kick, for example, we show them how to reflect on it constructively rather than destructively. Instead of internalizing, I'm a bad penalty taker, I failed, we guide them to analyze and learn. What did I feel in that moment, and what can I do differently next time? Was my approach off? Was my focus on the wrong thing? How can I train that scenario so I'm more prepared? We turn it into fuel for growth. This is where reflection and journaling come to play. After a game or event, I encourage players, and you can encourage your child, to spend a few minutes on a simple reflection exercise. In the Soccer Superstar Lab, we actually give our players a short post-game journaling routine. For example, we have them answering 3 questions in writing after every match or training session. What is one thing I did well today? This forces them to acknowledge a positive, reinforcing confidence and good habits. No matter how the game went, there's always something they did well. What is one thing I learned today? This frames mistakes or challenges as lessons. Maybe they learned something tactical or realized something about their mindset. If they missed that penalty, they learn might be I was focusing on the goalkeeper instead of picking my spot. I need to practice my mental routine for penalties. What is one thing I will improve next time? This turns reflection forward looking. It takes the sting out of the bad result and transforms it into actionable goal. Next time I will keep my shoulders back and call for the ball even if I made a mistake earlier. Or I'll practice 10 penalties, 10 minutes extra each training session. This kind of structured reflection does 2 huge things. It breaks the negative feedback loop of results feeding the destructive story, and it builds a growth mindset. Instead of a result being the end of the world or a final judgment on their abilities, it becomes the beginning of improvement, just part of an ongoing cycle of development. Over time, we can imagine how a kid who routinely does this will start to fear failure less. Mistakes and losses don't crush them like before because they've trained themselves to immediately extract lessons and move on. To summarize the superstar loop, the internal super drives the external star, and then the external results feed back to shape the internal. It's all connected in a continuous loop. This means two things. If you want to change the external performance, you must address the internal factors first. Otherwise, you're just hacking at the leaves of a tree instead of nourishing the roots. Imagine how we interpret and respond to external results. We can change what gets fed back into the internal cycle. Thus, we can break negative cycles and reinforce positive ones. I know this is a lot to take in, especially if you're just hearing this for the first time. So let's do this. Take a moment now to think about your child and everything I just explained. Consider a recent game where they struggled. Can you identify which part of this loop might have been the culprit? Was it the emotional control? E? Did the nerves get to them? Was it their thoughts? T? Were they in their own head after a mistake? Was it a perception issue? Did they start seeing everything as against them? Or was it something with their subconscious, some deep fear of not being good enough that you suspect might be holding them back? Identifying the right problem is half the battle. Once you know where the breakdown is happening, you can address it directly. And that's exactly what we do in the Superstar Lab. Pinpoint where the loop is breaking for each player and give them the tool for that specific link in the chain. Now let's bring this back to your child right here, right now. If they're struggling with confidence, inconsistency, or frustration, I want you to understand one thing important, and one very important thing. They are not broken. There's nothing wrong with them. They do not lack talent. They do not lack heart. What they lack are the right tools and training for their inner game. Think about it. We throw these kids into intense competitive situations and we expect them just to deal with pressure, with disappointment, with crazy expectations, all on their own. It's like tossing someone into the deep end of a pool and shouting, swim harder, when they start to drown. If no one ever taught them how to swim, is it fair to blame them for flailing? Your child is hitting a ceiling not because they can't improve, but because no one has shown them how to break through it. They're trying to play a high pressure game with zero training on handling pressure. They're trying to navigate complex emotions, fear, pride, anxiety, aggression with no map. Of course they get lost sometimes. I want to address something gently. As parents and coaches, we can unintentionally become part of the problem despite our best intentions. I say this without any judgment. I'm a parent myself and I've been a coach for years. And I know how easy it is to say the wrong thing even when you love the kid to death. Remember that car ride home we talked about? Now here's a common scenario. The child already feels bad about a mistake or loss. And what do we do as caring parents? We point it out again. Why did you do that? You weren't aggressive enough today. You need to focus more. We think we're helping by not sugarcoating or by giving them tips. But to the kid, it sounds like mom and dad is also disappointed in me. I really messed up. I'm not good enough. This can feed that negative loop in the subconscious even more. Again, no blame here. How could you know? Most of us raised the same way by our parents or coaches with tough love, try harder mantras. But now we do know how the inner game works. We can approach it smart. The beautiful thing is once a parent learns these mental skills, everything changes. The game becomes fun again. The pressure becomes a privilege instead of a terror. You start to see the child start to carry themselves differently, not just on the field, but in life, because these are really life skills disguised as sports training. The resilience, the growth mindset, the emotional control, that carries into the classroom, into friendships, into everything. So I repeat, your child isn't broken and you're not a bad parent or coach for not knowing how to fix this. These are just tools that few people talk about at youth level. The good news is we can absolutely teach them and turn things around. This understanding of the inner game and the outer game is exactly why I built the Soccer Superstar Lab. I didn't create the lab to be just another training program or another set of drills. There were plenty of great technical coaches and academies out there. The lab is different. I built it to be like a gym for the mind, a place where young players come to train their invisible skills and turn talent into real, consistent performance. Inside the lab, we focus on the things most regular team practices never touch. Identity shifting. We work on rewriting the internal script, transforming I'm the player who choked into I'm a big game player. We dig into the subconscious beliefs and update them. This can involve visualization exercises, affirmation routines, even guided discussions where players openly talk about their fears and reframe them. It's powerful when a kid realizes, hey, I've been telling myself a story that isn't true and I can choose a better story. Breath work and state control. We practice techniques to quickly calm the nervous system or ramp it up as needed. If you walked into one of our lab sessions, you might see a bunch of athletes lying on the floor, doing breath drills or practicing pre-game power poses. It might look more like a yoga class at moments than a soccer clinic, but this is where they learn to control their physiology. We teach them 3-second breath resets that can do in the middle of a game. You literally catch some of our players doing a quick inhale, exhale routine right before a penalty kick or a corner to center themselves. They learn how to use their body to change their mind in real time. Game intelligence and perception. This might sound purely tactical, but is deeply connected to mindset. We put players in scenarios to train their decision making under pressure. We do video analysis where we pause a clip and ask, what do you see here? What options do you have? At first, fearful players only see the problems on the screen, but as confidence grows, their field vision almost magically expands. They start seeing the opportunities. We can teach them to mentally slow down the game. A lot of times, panic comes from feeling like the game is too fast. We show them how to take a mental step back, observe, and then act. The perception goes from tunnel vision to panoramic. Resilience and reframing failures. This is huge. We create a culture in the lab where mistakes are not just okay, they're celebrated as learning moments. We even have a thing called Failure of the Week, where players share their biggest mistakes or embarrassment and we all clap for it, and then dissect what we learn from it. We give them specific reframing language. For example, if I failed to make the team, we make them say, I wasn't selected yet, which means I have feedback on what work to do next. We coach the parents too on this language, so the message is reinforced at home. The result is players who are fearless. They stop playing not to lose. They start playing to win because they know even if it doesn't work out, they'll grow from it. Community and mentorship. This one isn't an acronym or anything, but I mention it because it's important. In the lab, your child is going to be surrounded by other players who are on the same journey of improving their inner game. That creates an environment of support rather than judgment. They realize I'm not the only one who feels this pressure or anxiety. I personally mentored them. I'm in the forums, on the coaching calls, sharing stories from my career, answering questions. I become their partner in this process. And you, as parents, aren't left out. We have sessions for you too, because you play a crucial role in either reinforcing or unintentionally undermining what we're building in the kids. We make you a part of the team. I built the lab because I saw a massive gap in player development. We have tons of resources for drills, fitness, recruiting, but hardly anything on the mental side, especially tailored for young soccer players. My vision is to produce not just better players, but stronger, happier young people who love the game and thrive in pressure, rather than being crushed by it. As I've been talking, you've been thinking, yes, this makes sense. This is exactly what my kid needs. Then I'd love to invite you to consider joining the Soccer Superstar Lab. It's not magic, it's work, it's a process, but it's probably the most rewarding work a young athlete can do. And I'll be there personally to guide them through it. Whether you decide to join us in the Superstar Lab or not, I want to make sure you're leaving this session with something practical that you can use immediately. My goal was to make this valuable. So here's what I want you and your child going forward. First, try that one thing I mentioned earlier in your very next car ride home after a game. Instead of focusing on performance, enjoy the journey and the lessons. You're moving the conversation from judgment to curiosity, from why did you mess up to what did you get out of it. This change in your language can interrupt their negative loop right at the most vulnerable moment. After a tough game, instead of just sitting there marinating in shame, disappointment, you're helping them process it in a healthier way. Secondly, if your child is open to it, encourage them to start a tiny post-game journal, or even just a ritual conversation if they prefer talking. It doesn't have to be a diary of long entries. Even jotting a few bullet points can help. Use the 3 questions I shared earlier. What went well? What did you learn? What will you work on next? You might be surprised. Kids often have amazing insights when given the chance to reflect. And having written down helps them see their progress over time. It's like a dialogue with themselves that builds self-awareness and self-coaching ability. Now, for those of you who want to go deeper, if you're listening to all this and thinking, I wish my kid could have this kind of training and support consistently, then I invite you to check out the Soccer Superstar Lab. I'll be honored to be in your child's corner, teaching them these tools week by week and supporting you as a parent through this journey. The link to learn more is right below this video. You'll find all the details here. How the program works, success stories from other players, and how to get started. We are building a new generation of players who are strong from the inside out. Players who love the game and embrace the challenges that come with it. That sounds like something you want for your son or daughter. I would love for you to join us. Thank you so much for listening and for being the kind of parent who's looking for better ways to support your child. That alone speaks volumes about you. Your kid is lucky to have you in their corner. Let's keep nurturing not just better players, but better people through this beautiful game. All right, let's get to work.